Hi, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. Thank you for joining us today for our Densify monthly webinar. This is Andy Walton. I'm the VP of Technical Sales, and I'm joined once again by my expert in all things cloud, Faisal Mohammed, our Senior Cloud Advisor. How are you doing today, Faisal?
I'm doing great, Andy. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining this webinar today. We have a great topic. We're going to talk about some strategies for identifying cost anomalies on your AWS cloud. I'm going to go over some of our use cases that we've come across with some of our customers. So I think this topic will be very, very interesting for our customers here.
I agree. Yep. So lots of people attending today. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we begin. If you have questions, please post them in the GoToWebinar questions window. And I typically will address those during the session. And if I don't get to them, we will get to them at the end of the meeting. And we will provide a recording of this presentation early for next week. Our agenda today, we're going to cover three main topics: examining your AWS cost and usage reports of the curve files from AWS and breaking down your consumption patterns. We're going to talk about enforcing tags as well. So that's a very important topic for a number of our customers. Strategies for identifying cost anomalies. So common AWS services, understanding their billing models, and detecting cost outliers of both overspend and underspend conditions, both very important. And then Faisal at the end is also going to address how to build a successful FinOps culture. We could probably build its own webinar all around that, but some high-level pointers in that area. And then stick around at the end. We will do Q&A, and we will review or at least announce. For those of you that stay to the very end, one of you will win a $100 Visa gift card. So we're always happy to give money away for folks that are paying attention to our 30-minute webinar. So let's get going. Faisal, over to you.
Thank you so much, Andy. Yes. So one of the things that we deal with when we're talking with our customers is, okay, well, we moved to the cloud or we're migrating to the cloud. How do we ensure that our costs are under control? I mean, we had various drivers for moving to the cloud, whether it was just to maintain or gain agility, or give our more productivity back to our developers so that they could build products much more faster, get away from a data center to a cloud. And what happens is when these customers move to the cloud is that then they suddenly get a sticker shock. They see a cloud bill at the end of the month and they're like, that's not what we had initially anticipated. So to understand how you're spending your cloud bill, the first thing you do is, in the case of AWS, or whether you go to Azure or GCP, is to actually look at the detailed billing reports. I'm focusing primarily on AWS, but of course, this is pretty much applicable to any other major cloud provider out there. So what AWS does is that they do a great job to give you what's known as a detailed cost and usage report. And this detailed cost and usage report literally consists of like millions of line items for every single hour of usage of any of the instances or items that you're using in the cloud, whether it's a database, data transfer cost, load balancer, etc. And what happens is that at the end of the month, like, you get this big, massive CSV file. You have to go through them, and you could go through them with any BI tools if you want to, but you want to identify certain patterns. You want to understand where you're spending your money, what's going on, why is your bill so high? And Andy, if you were to click on the next build out the slide there. So what we did here at Densify is we built what's known as the CloudCost Intelligence platform. We understand the pain point of going through this millions of rows of lines in an Excel spreadsheet there. And what if there was a better way to visualize your bill? Perhaps you want to break it down by service, or by usage, by region, or by account, so that you can understand what really makes up the bulk of your bill from the cloud. And once you can first identify them, then you can do something about them. Maybe you want to build cost allocation reports. So you want to send back the chargebacks to the different teams that are consuming those resources in the cloud. Or you want to see how well you're using your ROIs or savings plans, etc. So you need a more thorough, intelligent platform to help you make sense of that data as we go through there. Andy?
Yep.
And one of the things that we always see when we're dealing with customers is, okay, well, yes, I like this idea of actually visualizing my costs, and I want to actually now start doing some chargebacks and showbacks. So can you help me? Can you help me identify who from which organization, which department, which cost center is responsible for the spike in my cost. And one of the first questions we ask our customers, and this is very, very standardized, what we're seeing is that there's a lot of non-conformity with tags. Organizations have no tagging standards whatsoever, or their tags that are missing. Developers spin up resources and shut them down. And at the end of the day, a finance person has no visibility into understanding where that spike in the bill came from. So one of the things that we do here at Densify as being cloud advisors is we actually preach, we evangelize proper tagging practices. So we say that, hey, you can't really measure what, you cannot really monitor what you cannot quantify. So let's start with actually building a good tagging practice. And you don't have to break the bank to actually build something like this. AWS offers several native tools that I'll talk over here. You could use something like AWS Config. It's a great tool, and I'll show a screenshot of that in the next slide, where you can actually see compliant and non-compliant resources. Or you can have cost allocation tags, or you could have service control policies and policy tags to maintain a standard of what kind of tag values that your organization accepts. What we do here at Densify, at the very bottom of the screen that you see there in the screenshot, is actually we can generate some inventory reports. So we can actually say, okay, well, we actually monitored your billing data and we looked at your resources, and here's which tags are very, very commonly used. Here's which tags that are not commonly used. Here are which accounts that have the least tag compliance based on what you have actually specified as mandatory. So we can give you that kind of organizational visibility so that you can build a good governance around your overall cloud infrastructure out there. And here's some strategies that we can talk about. So one of the things that AWS does, they have this thing called the AWS Config. It's a great, great solution. I use it personally for myself as well. And what you can do here is you can actually use a built-in rule that says these are my required tags for all my resources. Perhaps you want the department tag to be mandatory across all accounts. And any resource that has been spun up that does not have the department tag listed there will actually flag up as being non-compliant, as you can see here in the bottom of the screen. And so your management teams can actually now log into this dashboard. They can actually even get emails sent to them where they can see, okay, well, you know what? We know that organization ABC has the most resources that are actually non-compliant with our tagging policy, and therefore now we're going to actually, focus on them to help enforce proper tagging strategies there. Or another solution that you can use, which I also like, that's called the service control policy. That's in the next slide there. And
there we go.
No worries. And in service control policy, which is really neat here, is that you can actually say, by the way, I am not going to let you spin up any resources unless you have the mandatory tags. So in this example here, I've actually said, hey, listen, you know what? I'm enforcing these particular tags, and my tag is a department tag. And if you don't have the department tag specified in your resource, I will not let you actually spin up that resource. So I'm going to prevent the problem from occurring in the very, very first place. Again, when we deal with finance folks in the cloud, this is a huge headache for them when they want to do cost allocations and they don't have tags. So this is some strategies that you can use to actually narrow down and govern your actual cloud infrastructure out there. And there again, out there in the cloud solutions, you don't have to do anything special. I think there's some minimal cost for using them and great solutions overall provided by AWS there. So moving on there, let's talk about some of the common pitfalls that we see. So we see cloud people move to the cloud, as we said, organizations move to the cloud, and they get a sticker shock at the end of the month. So something's going on. What's going on there is that you actually have to understand what comprises up makes your bill up. So again, you have to have visibility into the actual service that you're utilizing, but also understand that AWS has several billing meters depending on the service that you consume. It could be based on the amount of hours that you're using it. It could be based on data transfer, number of concurrent connections, amount of gigabytes of volume of storage that you consumed, perhaps you've enabled logging or any other special features. So the first thing that we do is we actually say being informed is key to making smart FinOps decisions in any kind of organization out there. And also be aware that there are several other discounting schemes available at AWS. For example, you could use reserved instances, you could use savings plans, you could use spot instances or spot fleets or spot blocks, and also you can use auto scaling, backups, and lifecycle managers to intelligently manage and optimize the cloud. The key is that you got to actually evangelize best practices amongst your developers and keep them informed of all the good solutions that are out there in the cloud. So Let's take a look at reserved instances. Great idea, great solution out there, reserved instances and savings plans. And what AWS has done is that in case of reserved instances, you commit to a particular instance family or a usage in a particular region. And because of you committing to that particular usage, they give you a discount over a 1 or 3 year period. Savings plan is something that AWS announced last year. That's even better. In the case of savings plans, what you're simply saying is I'm committing to a dollar usage, and you could either specify a region or not a region, depending on whether you choose an EC2 savings plan or a compute savings plan. And AWS automatically applies the discount to the highest usage for you. So when we have those reserved instances and savings plan, it's important for you to understand how they are used. And the rules are actually listed in the AWS documentations, but again, it's very, very interesting when we talk to customers or prospects, they're not aware how they actually work. So here are the rules. What happens is first, if you have both reserved instances and savings plans, then AWS will actually first use the reserved instances before they're going to apply the savings plans for you. Okay. Next, if you have both EC2 savings plans and compute savings plans, and in the case of EC2 savings plans, just as a reminder, you're basically committing to spend a dollar amount on a specific instance family in a specific region. That's the EC2 savings plan. So it's more specific. Whereas in the case of compute savings plan, you're just simply saying, I'm going to spend $100, and you don't have to specify any region or any compute usage. It's applicable to all compute usages, even EC2, Fargate, Lambda, etc. So as you can see, EC2 savings plans is more specific, and AWS says we're going to use the EC2 savings plans up first before we're going to start applying the compute savings plan, which is more broader. Now, what happens if you're an organization or an enterprise and you have consolidated billing? Well, you have the ability to purchase these savings plans or RIs either in a linked account or the master account. So in the case of what we're saying here is that first, what the rules are saying that the purchasing account gets to consume. They have the first priority on those reservations or savings plans before they can spill over to the other accounts if sharing is enabled. So here's our best practices. What we have said is that if you're purchasing savings plan and AWS manages the savings plan by applying the highest discount usage for you, purchase them in a payer account, but make sure you do not have any usage in that account. That way, AWS automatically applies the maximum discount for you. The other thing is also be aware. You know, they say that their discounts are between 66% to 72%, the maximum you can get. But the truth of the matter is it actually varies by the OS. And we looked at, on one example here, we looked at 3-year all upfront compute SPs for EC2 M5 instances. And as we were looking at here, we saw that, hey, Linux gets the highest discount at 54% on average. RHEL gets around 33%, Windows at 28%, Windows SQL at 6%, and SUSE, I believe, wraps it around just around 4%, if I'm not mistaken. So it matters actually which AMI that you're actually using, which OS that you're actually using here as well. So let's go on. So what can you do? What are some pitfalls we see with customers? I bought a bunch of reserved instances. That's great. But what's important is you actually have to monitor this RISP utilization and coverage. So what you'll see in this graph here, what we do here at Densify is we pull that cost and usage data. And as we pull this cost and usage data, we actually have a visualization. We're actually looking at the bar graph to say, how well are you actually utilizing those RIs? Well, if you've committed to spending that much money, it's good for you to make sure that you're utilizing them more effectively. So we're seeing that, hey, you know, your ideal target here is 100%, but on average, you're using around 80%, 90% RI utilization.
It's pretty good utilization.
It's pretty good, but let's do something better. So let's do something else. Well, now on this other graph that we're doing here, this is actually even a better visualization. What we've done here is we actually took in your actual consumption of EC2 usage, and we've actually mapped out how much of that EC2 usage is consumed by on-demand, how much of that's consumed by RIs, and whether or not you've purchased any savings plans. In this case, you have not. So you can see your on-demand usage is quite higher compared to your RIs, and it's actually fluctuating up and down. So there's a potential for savings here that you should perhaps go ahead and invest in some savings plans, and we'll give some recommendations. And lastly, if you're buying RIs such as convertible RIs, it's very important for you to understand that, you know what, you bought these RIs, but your workloads could change over time. Maybe when you moved to the cloud, you did a lift and shift and you oversized everything. But after a year now, you're actually refactoring, re-architecting, and your workloads are changing. So you have to manage these RIs AWS is not going to do them for you. You have to do them yourself. So what we do here, we're actually looking at those RIs, and you can see the RI utilization is 50%. So some of those RIs are not being utilized. What if we could exchange them for something that you're actually using today, so we can get you more discounts? But the trick is to make sure we minimize your true up cost there.
Right, and also, what you're doing here is optimizing. You won't get this out of the box. You have to optimize and analyze those workloads to determine what is the best instance size for these things, right? I mean, this is not something that good old compute optimizer or just this general billing solution free tool from AWS is going to give you today.
Correct, absolutely. And that's a great point that you make there, is that what we do with our recommendations is we just don't tell you to blindly go ahead and buy RIs, but we actually say, let's go ahead and optimize your workload first, and then buy the RIs to cover them, or as savings plans to cover them. That's the goal here. Now, same thing with savings plans as well. What we see with customers, and one of the things that we always get a question, say, okay, well, now that I know my on-demand coverage, why don't I go for 100%? Well, that doesn't make sense much because of these reasons. As you can see in this graph here, this is another visualization. And in this case, we've used a BI tool. We use Excel here, but again, you could use any visualization tool. We have the data, that data can be pulled out. And what you'll see in the gray is that that's your on-demand workload, and it's spiky in nature. As you can see, it's gone up a little bit, then it comes down again and goes up again. Well, if you were to get 100% coverage and you hit at that 20,000 mark, then the potential is that, you know what, you may cover those gray workloads, but there's also all these other workloads, those things that in the white, you're not actually going to be using your savings plans for them. So you're actually overpaying for workloads that you're not using. So the trick here is to actually find the low water mark of your on-demand usage and use them. The other thing that you have to also consider, and you can see this towards the end of the gray chart there, is that your workloads went up, but they're coming down. So over time, you may be optimizing your workloads. Maybe your workloads are seasonal, right? And as a result of that, if you're going to go ahead and over purchase a bunch of savings plans because you want to get 100% coverage, well, in this case here, those savings plans, you're committing to them, and AWS is going to bill you for them whether or not you use them. So again, making intelligent decisions about savings plans and RIs is very, very important. And the other thing that, again, we talked about this, that your Linux gets the highest discount, but as you go down to the other, like SUSE, your discount goes down. So it's a diminishing returns. So it comes back to a strategy to figure out, okay, well, what exactly is your optimal savings plan that you need to buy? Similarly with S3, yeah, the storage costs can vary. You can see various storage costs by tier, by API calls, and some of the pitfalls, as you'll see, Andy, you can build a slide up here as we go through them. Is that customers, they forget to cache data. So for example, I have a bucket with a lot of static content in there, and I'm actually making a million HTTP GET requests there. I'm actually paying for them. Well, if the content is static, why don't I use something like CloudFront? Okay, and developers need to know that, so I can cache them. I get better performance out of it. At the same time, I don't make that much requests to my S3 bucket, and I lower my cost. Or in the next slide, we'll talk about Lifecycle Manager. So what happens is that AWS has a bunch of different storage tiers, from S3 standard all the way to Glacier and Glacier Deep Archive. And your costs vary by the storage tier that you use. So the goal here is to use something like Lifecycle Manager to intelligently move those objects as time expires. So maybe after 30 days, you want to move them to a S3 standard infrequent access, or maybe after 90 days, you want to expire that object because that object's no longer needed. So you can build those kind of rules. And be aware of data transfer costs. This is a key thing that developers are not aware of always. But intra-AZ or traffic between AZ is free of cost, but traffic across regions or across AZs can be expensive. So a lot of developers sometimes get shocks with data transfer costs, and that's not very, very common, but we see that a lot here. Okay, going forward. Same thing with EC2. Some of the pitfalls that we actually tell them, again, developers can spin up EC2 instances, and they associate them with an EBS block storage, and they take some snapshots. And then what happens is developers, they forget. They shut down their EC2 instance, and you can just simulate that, right? And what has happened is now they've left that EBS volume and the snapshot lying there. And developers, they forgot to set up that delete on termination attribute on. So now that EBS storage exists indefinitely unless someone goes and deletes them. So again, using the billing data, we actually build this visualization for a customer where we see the inventory age over time. And as you can see, towards 151 to 180 days, we actually noticed a pattern. Your EBS volumes are quite high compared to your EC2 instance in RDS. what's going on? Oh, okay, we found out that we are actually having a lot of EBS volumes that are orphaned and we need to delete them.
Right.
Lastly, use something like Instant Scheduler to schedule your workloads. And with this, I think, Andy, we can definitely go into a quick demo of our platform with the CloudCost Intelligence and show them how Outliers works as well.
Right, and I can get right in there right now. Did you want to go through it all, any of the components in here first, Faisal,
Sure.
on the cost anomalies? Yeah.
Sure. As you pull them up, essentially the idea with cost anomaly and outlier detection is to, again, look at your billing data. And we can look at over 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and we try to identify a pattern. Again, the whole goal is to find strategies in your FinOps to find some kind of anomaly. And we build a machine learning profile to see a moving average of your cost. That's the black line that you see there. And the two blue lines that you see, the dotted lines, are actually the two deviations, standard deviations away from that moving average. So anytime you actually have a cost that actually exceeds that, we actually flag it for you. And now, as a FinOps person or a finance guru, you get notified immediately that, hey, my spend is out of standard for that particular usage or for that service. It's a better example when we show this in a UI. So Andy, you can go
Why don't
ahead.
we do that? Yeah. Let's just go through just high level what CCI, the Cloud Cost Intelligence, looks like. This is the standard view. What I've done is I've just logged in and I'm looking at my curve file for a specific period, say for the last 8 months. I'm viewing this data by monthly, and it could be based on daily or whatever period you would like to see. And then I'm looking at this based on services, but we could be looking at on an account basis, on a tag basis. So all this data is here. And then of course, you can use filters for tags, properties, anything. Again, these are standard things that would be available as we pull data from the curve file. I might say, well, just show me what's going on with these guys in engineering who are spending all my money. So we could drill in a little deeper to find out exactly what their patterns look like. And then the tabular view allows that next level of drill down into the curve file where we can start digging in from a monthly basis to say, what does this look like from a high level? And this data is all, you can go to that next level. So from a high level and anywhere where you see this export button, we can take this data. A lot of our customers will export that into a specific view. They might even feed this into something like a business intelligence tool. We've got Jaspersoft hiding in the background here that you can use our business intelligence tool or something like Power BI, Tableau, Looker, what have you. And then of course, the next level, you can drill into any specific area. So maybe in January, you see, AWS config costs were awfully high. I could drill into that, and that will actually pull up the line by line items view for us. So just to show that that level of data is always there, and we can see exactly, where that money was spent on a daily basis. In this case, this is a monthly basis actually. So if we go back and probably what we want to do here is let's just drill into a live example on the anomaly side. And it looks very similar to what you were seeing there on the other chart, but that data is always available. Some of our customers would do this. So use a standard report and drill down to specific areas. So I might look at this, say, show me the previous 3 months on a daily basis and view that by service. Again, you could use a tag to say, well, there's specific accounts or specific business units or specific owners that I want to have a closer look at. And what we'll do is from an outliers perspective now, let's click on this. And this will bring up from this view, now looking at, were there any outliers in this area? And again, an outlier being a definition that we would show here. It says, how do you want to view this data? How many standard deviations do we want from the average? What sort of a time window do we want to see? What's the minimum number of samples? And what's the minimum number of dollars? Maybe I don't care about certain spends below a certain amount. And then you can simply drill in on, well, let's have a look a little deeper on the Elastic Cloud. And then that will pull up any areas where we see deviation from the average spend. In this case, 2 deviations. And I could drill in on a specific area here, which is kind of neat. So I could say, well, let's have a closer look at this. And now I can see on a daily basis where the average was and 2 deviations below. And it's often important to see, where are you spending more money, but also where are you spending less money. I've used this example in the past where one of our customers was looking at their RDS service and their spend was much lower than the average. They dug in and figured out that there was a configuration change someone had made that was saving them money. So of course, you want to apply those kinds of changes, and they ended up saving tens of thousands of dollars based on actually making that change. Just keeping an eye on time here, Faisal, so I'm going to flip back to the presentation and we'll let you finish off, and then we will take any questions we have here. So let's
Sounds good,
go
Andy.
back to
Thank
the
you so
FinOps
much.
culture piece. Yep.
Absolutely, Andy. And what we're seeing now with the increase in adoption of cloud essentially is that, customers are now saying, okay, well, we need to actually start managing a cloud more smarter. I know we have this access to this unlimited resource, this great potential, this great enabler, right? But how do we build a FinOps culture? So AWS is a great publication called the Cloud Adoption Framework White Paper. And it's important to understand, what were your reasons for going to the cloud? Was it to get agility, to enable more productivity? Perhaps you're moving out of a data center, so you want to move from a CapEx to an OpEx perspective. But also, you have to also understand, okay, well, what changes has your organization adopted or made in order for you to make yourself cloud ready? And there are 6 perspectives that AWS talks about in great detail. Changes that you made to your business, to your people, to your process, operations, and security and governance. And based on that, how mature you are ready to go to the cloud. The other thing that we talk about with customers, and it was a great conversation I had with some conversations on prospects, was that how closely collaborated are your finance and your engineering folks? Is finance aware of your plans to shut down resources, or are engineers aware of your rising cost? There needs to be a very close loop feedback between these two organizations in this new reality. The other thing that you want to do is you want to empower the people who are actually provisioning these resources to understand the cost of their decisions. So what we mean by that is actually building cost allocation reports, chargebacks, based on your whatever chargeback model is, whether it's by department, by allocation tags, or whether by organizations, so that the developers can say, oh yeah, now I understand that me choosing that S3 bucket as S3 standard and leaving contents there lying for over 100 days when I don't need those storage costs is costing my organization X amount of dollars. And you want to get management on board. I mean, this whole thing about FinOps is it will not be successful unless you get senior management approval to say, yes, you know what, we are aware of our rising costs, and we're going to be doing something about this. And here's a top-down approach to make cost optimization everyone's job. It's just not one person like the finance people's job, but everybody. And lastly, depending on the maturity of your organization, on how advanced you are, you can think about, okay, well, let's make this a run process. Let's go ahead and automate this whole thing, governance and optimization wherever possible. And Densify, we help customers, whether they're small businesses that are going to the cloud, all the way to large enterprises who are fully mature in the cloud and want to run. And we can help them with the whole governance and optimization by plugging directly into the CI/CD framework as well. So with that being said, Andy, I'll pass it back to you.
Great. Well, the great thing is that we can help companies at least get started with this process and help them. We've got experts like yourself here that will help them dig through, not just the analytics and understanding where they are for their spend and anomalies and optimization, et cetera, but helping them establish some of those best practices around building that FinOps culture. Try it out. If you'd like to see how our analytics and our process will help you, start your Densify trial, fill in the form, just go to densify.com/product/trial or start. You fill out the form, we'll contact you. Essentially, it is a very pain-free process where we send you a welcome email, you have a custom URL running in the cloud, your own dedicated instance, you log in, you provide your credentials, start up the data collection. It typically only takes minutes to get started. And then we get a view very quickly of your AWS, your Azure, your GCP environments to determine exactly what your opportunity looks like. And typically within, within the day or at least an overnight process, depending on when you start your trial, we have 60 days worth of data to analyze and say, here's what your opportunities look like. I'm going to keep an eye on the questions here. And so thank you very much for everyone who's attended here today. I will get to the questions in just a moment. Actually, let's just do one right now, and then I will announce the winner and we'll wrap up because we're right at the top of the hour. Faisal, just one question here around reserved instances in the convertible. It looks like we've caught someone's attention around that. How often should I be running that reserved instance process for the convertibles? So I think we have some customers doing that today. Is it on a daily basis where they're looking at that, or on a weekly basis? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, we try to be as proactive here at Densify overall, right? So we are monitoring your resource utilizations as well as your RI utilization and RI coverage overall here. We try to meet up with our customers at least once a week or once every 2 weeks to give them recommendations on RI conversions to maximize that RI coverage and utilization. But we also keep an eye on those expiring RIs as well. So as those RIs are coming up for expiration, we try to quickly switch you over to savings plans. So again, the savings plans give you a far more flexibility than RIs. So it can go anywhere between weekly to bi-weekly meetings with our customers. That's how often we are meeting with them.
And I guess the great thing as well is, as part of that process, we can actually automate the purchase of those reserved instances through our APIs. So as we come up with the answers as to how to optimize, we can actually help you make it so without fingers on keyboards, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Okay, I will stop the Q&A. So thank you very much. We'll follow up with anything that I didn't get. We are at the top of the hour. I did want to announce the winner of the $100 gift card, and I apologize if I get this name wrong. It's Saya K. I won't say which company you're with, but Saya, we will reach out to you after the webinar and let you know how we can get, or at least find out how we can get that gift card out to you. So thank you again. Great work, Faisal. Very informative today. We have a webinar tomorrow, actually. So if you're not done with webinars, we have a great one with one of our partners, AMD, how to achieve greater performance on your AWS investment using AMD EPYC chipsets and Densify. So just go back to the website, densify.com/events, company/events, but you'll find it on our main page. Register, and we've got a great session lined up for you tomorrow. Thank you very much. We will see you again on these pages for our next webinar tomorrow and then through in December. So thanks, Faisal, for doing this today. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, guys. Cheers.
Okay, everyone out there, have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.